Okay. So let's settle in to restore in our spine, our hips, and our core. Okay, so I want you to start with a ramp. So you're going to build a ramp. You'll have a blanket rolled up and then a bolster. Now, your bolster could be standard bolster flats. You could play with round bolsters on this one. I mean, you're in your home practice, so you might, change it out if you have other types of bolsters. You want to kind of feel the movement of the ribs. Okay. So then you got a blanket at the top, and when you sit in front of the bolster, be sure that you're sitting right up to it, right? You don't have any space between the bolster and you, so you don't want to be rounding your back. So I want you to first get a couple blocks and place them under your thighs, okay? The knees point out, the feet come together. The higher the block, probably the more comforting it will be for your SI joint, but also your knees, okay? Because this all has that connection. Now, as we add the belt, we got a big loop. You want to buckle it up, okay? Might as well go big because you can always tighten it. And then as you drape it over and it drops down to your hips, this is supposed to help our hips. So if I reach forward, and I guess I need a little more belt, I'm going to scoop up my feet and place it around the top of the foot to the arch. And then I just slide it so it's snug, connecting my feet to my ankle thread. Then I'm going to pull. Well, might not need to pull much, but I'm going to move the buckle so it's in easy reach to unbuckle when I need to, or loosen it up. Or as I lean back, I'm going to slide the belt and kind of push it down so it's right against the bolster, right? It's not above the bolster. That's key. It's right against, I push it down so it's almost right. It's right below the tailbone. Kind of a funny spot, isn't it? So it's we do the rolling with the ball, it's going to feel like it's around that zone. And when we lower back, I want you to get a feel of you kind of anticipate how this stimulates the core. And we're not doing crunches, okay? Those days are gone. So what we're using now is the blocks to support the thigh contour. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of wiggle my way to wellness here, and feeling that the thighs are pressed and motioning outwards to relax the dynamic in my knees. It's almost like I want more of my thigh towards my knee to be comforting it. And as I guide my head back, the sooner the better, you can add your sand. So it can go from heart to belly. It can go across the ribs, and you can even be sand free, okay? And I find that since there's such a intriguing awareness of breath when you get to the still point of your first pose here, you might like that weight training on the breathing muscles. You might like the sand. And because you're on a little bit of a kind of runway with your back, you might need the sand to go straight from the heart to the belly lengthwise, just so it doesn't feel like it's falling off in any intense breath. And just that slow emphasis of resting back. And even if the arms are relaxing out to the sides, keep them in a comfortable reaction state for the shoulders. Right? So if my shoulder bones feel as if they're pretty symmetrical here, kind of balancing a lot of things out. There's each side, but this is a great shape to find some balance in the spine and everywhere. Right? So as you settle in, feeling the movement of the breath, resting the eyes, maybe an eye pillow, if it doesn't fall off, would be okay here. If you have one that goes around your head, that can be extra helpful for this practice. But the lungs do not create the breath, right? So what's creating the breath is the movement of the breath, right? It's the ribs, the diaphragm. its action with breathing. So finding how your interaction with your breath kind of brings you to a different state, right? Even though in your daily habits you are busy, but probably not focusing on the circulation that comes from slow breathing. So define a breath. If you have that sand, you have that weight training for the breathing muscles. And it might make it slow down. Gently opening the heart and settling in. The props are active, right? They're supporting you, but your body is the receiver of the practice. For probably 70% of our practice, there's some things where we need a little bit of activation for muscles for certain, but we try to use the props. Each pose has a prop that's supporting you, one or many. And now, if you feel you want to move the arms a light amount, you can bring the hands just up over the core, interlace your fingers, and feel when the hands turn inside out towards the ceiling. So there's that kind of weave of movement in the wrist. This is a good one to do, just interlacing and moving your hand to open up through that lower, right, that carpal tunnel zone, even though this is easy to do for most of us. If I push and rotate and then I extend back, and find where it's comfy, right? Don't push the edge or try to anticipate like the end range, right? So finding what's a little less than the end range. And the movement of the arms changes the association with the breathing muscles a little bit, right? Because I'm activating my ribs, right? I'm using the muscles to stretch them back versus just moving them with a relaxation pose. Take about 3 breaths. Take as many as you like. Relax the mouth. Breathe in through the nose. Okay, and then shed the pose. So we'll lower down the arms and we'll take the sand away. And I want you to unbuckle, loosen up your belt. If you got another type of buckle, that's fine. Some of us have other cinch belts and some of us have the D-ring. So when we slide the feet apart, kind of feel the knees move out like, you just had the feet close together, knees out. Just a little bit of butterfly motion. Kind of feel when the knees push in together, constructive rest, they move out. Kind of feel where the hip reach is, right? It's kind of isolated in the hip. But then you'll take a ball, okay? If you don't have a ball, what can you use? Like, you could use a towel, like a thick towel. You could use a block for this one when you lean in. So pressing that left heel down. I like to like push through the heel to let the rest of the foot rest and then cross the right ankle to the left knee. There is a challenge keeping your tailbone close to the bolster for that maneuver. So if you kind of push a little bit down through tailbone, okay. But don't slide off of the bolster. Add the ball to the upper outer left thigh, and then just lean the body weight into that ball. So you're just tipping over to the left. Now, what you might do is you lean the knees to the left side, as you might have your block. I mean, mine just happens to be there and it feels kind of nice. So I'm going to leave it there. Some of us might decide, oh no, I want to go further, just let it go to its end range. But how about holding onto your right knee with your left hand? Okay, that's going to eliminate the crashing, right, of dropping out of your pose. And the right arm extends back besides your head, or it relaxes out to the right side on the floor, or even better, okay, on a block. Okay, so I don't have to push down into my shoulder. I can just relax my arm down onto a block on that right side. So kind of refine that sense of circulation in the right hip. Give it a few moments before we roll it. And feeling where you're holding on. Now, if this bothers your knee, then you go above to the thigh. That's fine. You might grasp on the side of the thigh, like right near the IT band, and kind of wiggle around in there. Okay, do a little bit of palpate. You could palpate, get a little pressure in there, kind of squeeze to the IT band area. Let your fingers do the walking there, kind of feel that. Slightly, a little bit of pressure. Now, when you come out of this, I want you to go directly to where you feel the stretch with the ball. So I feel this in my right buttock. It's definitely glute area, but I just feel it down in there. So when I come back with letting go of my knee, I'm going to move the ball into the right rear. And as I roll, I put mine kind of right on the side when I'm starting to roll. So you might find that you roll with the ball to the meat, right to the border. I think it's going to feel better to have it to the side or up a little bit higher near the bolster. Okay, so kind of that's your spatial outline you're going to roll on when you're on your back, but can't roll when you're sitting up on your knees like that. Nope. So you might find that if you go right, kind of hook to the border, so it's even just feeling like it's close to the leg, might be interesting today. You can try some different things. You can also really use that bolster to support you, kind of tip the body weight into that ball and into the bolster, put your elbow down onto the ground and kind of rub, right? You're really trying to use your hip movement to massage the glutes, right? If you don't have hip consciousness, right, it's not going to work for this one. So if you just feel like, yeah, my hip is not conscious of this movement, then you can back off if you don't like it. But as you go side to side, if you don't have a ball for this one, just do windshield wiper. Just have your hip center and knees go side to side. Okay, that's been a good option. And just a few more moments here. You can kick the leg up. You can go back to figure 4. And so that gives you kind of an isolated wave of movement into the glute. That's nice. Just be careful about the knees. Not that you're hitting your knee with your foot, but you could be pulling the knee a bit. Okay. So really master the movement in the hips. That's key, not the knees. Knees do enough. Knees have to hold enough. And then when I come back center, I'm going to reset myself on my bolster because I got a little bit off of it. And I'm going to come back with my tailbone right on that edge. Left ankle to the right knee. That worked out good. Ball to the upper outer right thigh or right next to your hip bone. And then lean the knees to the right. Okay, so the right foot is sickled. This bottom foot is turned out. And as I hold on to that left knee, I kind of missed that block over there actually. So I'm going to use that. Now you could place the block besides the right knee or under the left foot. Could be either one. And you might be used to doing this without any props for so long that you don't see any point in it. The point in it would be to allow you to settle in deeper into the sensation, not be trying to hold right parts of the leg up. So you're just grasping the left knee with the right hand, and the left arm can be stretching back. It could also be besides you on the ground or the block. You want to get a block there. And just feeling that waist centered, we're preparing it to twist. So I want you to feel that the navel center can relax. There's more of this width in the navel center. There's a lift and lower. Just starting to stretch the breathing muscles as much as these other areas that we're stretching. Always consider that. What am I doing for the circulation back to the lungs, back to the heart? It's all connected. Now let go of the knee. and then get the ball to that left rear. It doesn't have to be a perfect spot. You can let the knees come back in center. I like to keep that figure 4 sometimes and then push down to my right foot, or you can have both feet down, push and lift and put the ball under that left buttock. And then when you feel the hips go into movement, right, that right rear doesn't have anything under it. So it's not going to be an area that you're pushing into. So it's kind of interesting. You're trying to focus with your kind of mechanics, right? Your coordination with your muscles on pushing with the left rear. And that's kind of funny because you're trying to jostle the tissues and modulate that movement on the skin. So the ball interacts with the skin, right? And the surface muscles to massage them and hydrate those tissues. I'm a big fan of rolling on these. Okay. Probably more of doing rolling, right, in downtime between classes than it would be like poses. Just because it's so good for that lymph, that movement. It's just these softer balls are really good for that. So good for your circulation, right? Circulatory system. So when I let my body weight lean, now what I want you to do is play with, now if the ball is at that left rear, right on the border, right, the glute medius, what happens when your weight leans into it and your left leg kind of kicks up towards your upper body? And now we're going to kind of set up to come into our twists. So when you lean to the left, put down your foot, put the foot down. Okay, let the spine shift back onto the bolster like your spine is kind of rolling, although we don't really do that in class, do we? You never heard, unless you're doing cat-cow. You're going to move the ball, and then you're going to roll on the left hip bone, and then see if you can start to create movement into sleeping sage pose, minus the sandbag. I know some of us anticipate, how to get my sand on my back, but let's just twist. So we got our bolster set perfectly. This could be any, no improvement could be made on this. What I can improve on though is, let's say when you lean down that you want the bolster to come up to you so it's a little more comfortable. You could put like a block under the bolster. I know some of you think that's just way too high, but maybe you feel like you need that today. Okay, so if you feel like you need the props to come to you, right, to support you, they're active, you can do that. Another thing you could do on this one, which I think is kind of interesting for circulation, is put the ball. I like to play with this. So I put the ball kind of on the left side of the colon, right, about here. And then I might not stay with it for long, but as I'm here, I lean in. And then just a few breaths, right? So a little bit of massage into that left side of the abdominal muscles, organs. You can go a little bit of side to side. When else are they going to get a massage, right? Pretty unlikely you're going to push your hands in and do visceral manipulation, right? So this is a nice way to do that work right here. And then I would say after maybe 30 seconds, just come down. That area is kind of circulating from that event, and just relax your head on the blanket. And feel this right side of the spine, and actually the muscles that thread out from that side of the back, the right side, kind of reach around this QL area, relaxes. Okay, the hands could be out, palms could be turned open to the ceiling, and the hands could also reach under the bolster. And they're all okay. You don't have to find that this is what's the most advanced version isn't necessarily the best for your circulation right now. So yeah, I'm really curious, since I'm not using sand on my back, of taking more of that V reach with the arms. So just stretching them towards the back space, over, and then heart relaxing. And you're going to notice your heartbeat more on the left side, right? You're going to go, oh, boom, 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 boom. So I have to admit, this left side doesn't always feel like I can be at complete peace with my awareness because of the heart, but it's nice to have it, and that it's working. And I can start to slow it a little bit with my breath. Okay, now let's just simply slide the hands back. We're going to take one with the sand option next. So just turn the bolster across horizontal and then take a blanket stack. If you've got towels instead, like beach towels, that's fine, but you want to add things up so it's about the height of your bolster. So this is an especially good one if you have a round bolster. But I'm pretty content with this because I can set up the situation for this length in my mid body all the way through everything. So I place a block or two overhead. If your shoulder is a little bit suspect that this is going to happen for your arm, you can always just nix the blocks. Some of you don't use them. Okay. Now, sandbag ball option under the right knee. Sandbag goes to the outer right hip or the waist. Okay. So lean into that left side. Now that you've done the twist, you kind of warmed up the back a little bit with ease. And then we'll add our sand. Yeah, I had it where it's easy, like it's not going to fall off. Likely if I have it through that whole ledge of my side, sometimes it just drops off the back right when I'm getting relaxed. Okay, so feel as you settle in this current of circulation in the side, right? So the left side is resting and pressing, just using your body weight to surrender into the props. And moving the blocks if you need to the right side, right? That'll be easier on the shoulder. But relax the throat. You're noticing the sensory organs sometimes in this one. You can feel circulation in the face. It's a different amount of pressure in our throat when we lean to the side. There's a lot of systems to take care of here when we do our practice. So don't feel like you have to go to the fullest range. So if there's something that you see here that you're gonna just take out, like the arm reach, that's fine. You can have that right hand resting on the bolster, on the other arm, so my head relaxes into the blanket. That feels really good. So just feeling how you can relax your neck. Maybe that top arm, right, the right arm goes behind your back. This is a great one to get interaction with the armpit tissues, right? All this inner space here with the armpits, the leg pits get a little connection here as well. But resting the neck. Now, when you breathe and feel the core moving, if it's all connected into the belly kind of pumping, that movement, the diaphragm, see if you can feel just this intercostal space, right? The ribs. Be patient with yourself. The circulation occurring. The weight of your head resting. A few more breaths. Okay, now when we shift, we'll just move our sand if we have that. We'll start to move the right leg to the left. So you kind of have that, almost that fetal position of movement down with your upper arm. If it's overhead, you just bring it to the blanket. And then feel your head turn towards the blanket, face down towards the blanket, and then pivot to your knees. If this is too much on the knees, you can use a blanket under them as well. But what I would encourage us to do is to put our bolster on top of our blankets and then stretch out through the back. Okay, so take the time here. If this is too much with your neck, what the heck do? You can put a block, right? You can add a block under your forehead. Okay. That actually works pretty good. Yeah, because that can add quite a bit to your arms. If you don't have anything under your forehead, it can be just a lot of pressure around the upper rotator cuff. I mean, you might feel like it's just too much pressure, period. So you might like that. All right, now hands down on the ground, not on the bolster. And then let the feet shift back. If you're too close to the wall like me, it'll be interesting. So I don't know, I'm gonna leave the block there and see what happens. I'm gonna move my ribs forward and lift up the chest, arching. So this means a little more roll through the spine. And then I'm gonna come back and reach my hips towards my feet, like child's pose. Okay. Now feel when you move forward. I think I'm gonna hit this block. You find that spine undulating motion, so you lift up. You can turn your hands out if this bothers your wrists, and then come back. So if this is too much on the wrist, you can turn your hands out, but you can also put your hands on blocks, which makes it a little more comfortable in your wrists, right? You bring the floor up to you. Okay, so take about 3 more. So if you need to get the blocks, just use them. I mean, I'm happier with blocks because now my wrists are just less jam in the wrists. Yeah, no wrist jam. We don't like jam in the wrist. Okay. Now, next time you come back, find table. Feel that movement of the spine flexing, so chin to chest and cat pose. And then arch the spine. Okay, now let's say the wrist thing is bugging you. Like, oh yeah, it's nice, but it still bugs me. Just be on your forearms, on your blocks, and try cat-cow for a few moments. So you can feel movement in the spine and the belly. Okay, don't make it so that it's so intense on your wrist. Just arching and flexing. Okay. All right, and then we'll come into, I think we'll do sleeping sage first, because we should follow our rhythm here, huh? Okay, so now, and with that movement of the belly, I find it interesting for my in and out breath, right? I don't know, it's challenging when you do cat-cow for breath, the phase of your breath, right? It's almost as if you get into, it's challenging to get a long breath with the curling movement. So that's a good homework one to play with. You can do it just sitting in a chair, right? And then just feel a little arch and a little movement. The only challenge in a chair is that your seat is stuck to the chair and it's hard to get the tailbone to move. Okay, now set up for a sleeping sage on the second side. Get a blanket under. I like the blanket to be rolled up. I just like to follow the rules sometimes. Okay, so now I'm kind of getting close to the bolster, and for certain, my hip has a little different relationship from side to side as far as how I move across the sacrum. Sometimes I go, oh, this is different. So I'm going to add the ball. Okay, I like to get some circulation here in my abdominals. So keep in mind, you can, I know it's a little bit bizarre, but I've got the ball here and I got the bolster, and then I'm just going side to side so I can go cross fiber motion in this area. This area matters too, not just these hips. Okay. You could try going straight down on the bolster with the ball. Like you can, okay. But I just think that's just not comfortable to rest in. So get some movement, jostle the tissues there. Wake up the digestive tract a little bit here. Wake up at the skin level, right? And then you'll just put the ball down. You could put it under your left knee if that's helpful. But as you reach, you want to find that the ribs are they're kind of peaking the sensation up just at the base of the heart. So when I reach my chest, I can never reach it enough on this one. I could always improve on it. But as long as I have a nervous system and things get kind of tight, and I breathe and I try and I effort, it probably won't just, fully kind of unwind. So I'm going to lower down. I'm going to use the bolster to push into my rib space and then let my head turn to the left. Okay, the left leg could rest back. You could bring it to the right leg in a fetal position. But I want you to feel that the back muscles are opening. Right? The back muscles up here don't have to do the twisting per se. Think about the abdominals, this rib front area turning, and then the back space of the ribs opens up. Okay, so twists help the rib cage open up. So as you relax into it, feel the reach of the breath. Yeah, I mean, being in a body can be messy, right? So the breathing can feel like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm getting the back, the front. Just breathe, right? And use the support of the pose, okay, to kind of organize the circulation in these organs, right? Massage them. It's so nice to have the bolster to help with that. So maybe the arms reach towards the back of your space. Maybe they slide down. Maybe they hug the bolster. Okay, now come into side sage. So we'll push the blanket on the top back, we'll pivot the bolster, we'll turn our waist to the bolster on the side, the right side. And you can come into this, quickly, right? You don't have to get up and do any movements. All you're doing is moving your bolster across the mat and then adding a ball to the inside of that left leg, and then perhaps adding a sandbag to the outer left hip, rib. Some of you like the sand higher, right? And if your shoulder is a little challenged for this reach, you might instead maybe put your sandbag higher on the ribs, because that'll give you some stretch up here, right? The sand will give you some connection up into the space. So you can play with how high you go with the sand on the side, so you can keep some movement in that armpit chest, even if the arm is holding the sand or it's kind of down onto that bolster, okay? And you certainly can turn your head and roll on the back of your head. Perfect option here. Okay, I like that one a lot for my neck, but some of us are going to just let our head tilt down to the right. Perfect. Yeah, this sand aid on the high part of my ribs, this isn't the highest part of my ribs, but the thicker part, I can feel a little challenge, right, with trying to bring my breath into its full expansiveness, right? I feel a little bit like tapped down. So just trust that process. It doesn't need to be the biggest breath or feel like you're stretching your breath that well. I mean, you use it as a stretching tool inside your body, your breath. And sometimes just feeling that shrink wrap on your breathing muscles is interesting. Okay, so you can always try the sand higher. Or down on the hip. Hips can use the weight. I mean, weight bearing into these bones, right? Weight, put the weight on your hip. Let the opposite hip, which is maybe needs more padding sometimes, we need like an extra towel This is where people ask for like 2 mats because it's too much pressure on the hip bone. So always feel free to add any cushion you need. Okay, let's take a few more moments here. Just settle in, side sage. The sage part of the pose is really the leg position, right? When we do twist poses, this is where the base of the body, our legs are formed into a sage pose. But what I feel, the sage pose is where my mind can relax, my brain settles into its side. My right arm is heavy. I'm not trying to hold the right arm up at all. And now just bring that focus, the scanning, maybe to the elements here of the extremities, the reach. And we'll soon be moving to our feet to make the reaches into these areas. Right now we're just on our hip bone, we're on the pelvis with the reaching out of the pelvis into the extremities. Okay, so it's kind of a little bit passive in some way, right? It's restorative, so there are moments when we're receiving the circulation from the pose for certain. Okay, now when we come out of this one, you might open out the left side of the chest, not just the arm, but the arm helps facilitate the opening of the chest, this armpit chest, all this lymph node in here. Just let that open up. If it's really kind of stressed out there, right, like your wing is stressed, it doesn't quite want to separate here, do what you can. Maybe you circle it, maybe you hold the shoulder and circle. There's all kinds of things you can do. It doesn't have to be this arm open. It could be holding and moving. Yeah, and as you come around, remember we always kind of hunker back in the armpit, right? It's not like you walk around with your arms like this all the time. So this is going to go back into kind of hunker zone. So it's realistic it would be a little gripped up. Okay, so just have a little empathy for this part. Now when you roll to that right hip, roll so the sand goes off. And then we're going to move the ball. And I want you to come around carefully. Careful is the key. To turn your bolster so your feet are to the wall. If you only use the wall, like when we actually need to touch the wall later in class and it's across the room from you, that's okay. You can have your feet just where they are without a wall. And then I'll have my knees a little wider than the bolster. And if you need padding under your knees, add it. But come all the way forward so that there's part of my thigh. That's too much leg on the bolster. And I'm going to go forward so that my core is resting on my bolster. Yeah, wonder how we can use those blocks, huh? Now, bring your arms forward so the elbows are out. If it pushes the chest and you're just thinking, this is unreal chest pressure, you can move a little bit forward. You can move the bolster. And if it's way too much on the chest, like forget it, you can always turn the bolster this way, right? Then it's not going to push your chest. Okay. But it is helpful for our back, our core, our posterior core right now to have the bolster this way if you can, lengthwise. Okay. Now, forehead resting down onto your hands or your lower arm and feeling the feet reach back. Now, if my feet are on the floor, not on the wall, I'm going to let the toes hook under and stretch back from the balls of the feet like springing, like spring load the ball of the foot. If I'm at the wall, I'm just going to let the knees lift up so they're not pushing into the ground. And the bolster is partially, for me, it ends up about here on my thigh. So, you know, it's definitely supporting my lower core. Okay, that way my knees come up. Okay, now reach the right hand back to the sacrum area, sacrum tailbone zone. Could be tailbone area where you're kind of pushing into your tail, back of the pelvis. And then bring the left hand back. I would say interlace your fingers if you can and stretch the arms back and just lifting up. I mean, the only amount of lift up is just moving your chest a little forward, throat lifting. Breathe. Okay. Okay, locust pose. So here we are, we have our feet pushing. Now, as your left arm comes forward onto the blanket, then the right arm, lift up the chest here, press down to your elbows out wide. If that's too much on your shoulders, bring your hands straight away from you, so extending them versus crossing them. And using the back muscles. Okay, and then as we lower down onto the hands, relax the knees now, let the lower back rest, maybe let your hips move a little side to side, kind of wag your tail. Breathe. Okay, now hands come down besides the bolster, under shoulder-ish, right? Elbows kind of swing out, okay? And this is interesting on the wrists, right? So if I swing my elbows out, you know, how my hands move might be, right, that webbing between the thumb and the index doesn't stay stable for most of us on this one. So I want you to bring your elbows in by your sides as you come up. So think of this as a variation of up dog. Maybe close your eyes and just feeling where you can lengthen that core, and then lift up the knees and push back to maybe a down dog for you right now. If this is too much, just have the heels lifted. I'm going to keep my heels up on the wall, and I'm going to make my way back. So I'm going to walk my hands back. I'm going to walk my feet forwards. They're not going to stay at the wall. So I can actually come back to take this forward fold. Now I want you to just take this for a few seconds, because we'll do plenty of inversion. So right when we focus on moving the energy to the top of the body, to the brain, to the heart, to the lung area, we want to have an upward flow. And even though we're downward, right, we're moving our head down, but it's moving the energy up the body, being inverted. Okay, now bend your knees. If you got a bolster there, I would just say push it over to the side for right now, near the base of your mat towards the wall. Hands above the knees, and then come on up. Okay, now let's turn to the wall, and we're going to take an L shape. So I'm going to have my hands and my hands at the wall about a little wider than shoulder distance. And I want my feet, right? So my feet are right. You know, I want to stabilize so the pelvis, the hips are right above. But some of us are going to walk our hands up the wall if our shoulders feel really stiff here. So I want you to walk your feet back, feel the knees bend, feel the chest stretch, L stretch, L shape. And then as you want to work on rolling those inner arms, so I want to feel when I reach with my arms, instead of trying to get my arms to scoop in like this, I want you to try to keep that inner line of the arms, just like you would in dog pose. Okay, so I'm trying to stretch out through the armpit chest. Yeah, I can feel this starting to activate in my shoulders, so I'm going to walk my hands up a little bit at the wall. So that's a little easier on my shoulder. And it might not be the same for you. You might bring the hands down the wall. Okay, but just stretch out through the chest there. Okay, let your hips maybe move a little bit side to side. You don't have to be completely still. Really get that breath in the lung here. So in breath, filter through the nose. Big ribs. Okay, now let all that movement in the ribs, which is intercostally right up to the lungs, kind of move all that blood flow to that area. So you're going to turn to your left. So the right foot is near the wall. It could touch the wall. And you're going to take a wide stance, forward fold. Okay, so I'll be honest. I think I want to block here. So I'm going to take a walk on over. I'm going to I'll get them both. Why not? Get 2 blocks. Okay. Now carefully, you're going to have the blocks if you want. So when you take that wide stance, it's like you're using both sets of extremities. I like that about this, the block version. It says, you know, yeah, many of you probably can go this way, but feel like you can kind of coordinate shoulders. I mean, what's connected that feels like it's in the base, kind of like shoulders are going to feel like kind of hip zone. Okay, and now start to come into your inversion of choice, which is probably going to be for some of us, we'll just lower the blocks a little bit. Okay, we might move them forward and head down between the arms. Some of us will bring our hands between the feet, so that shoulder width maybe a little wider, elbows back, crown of the head towards the ground, right? And some will hold the ankles. And if you're feeling a little unstable with your lungs, this is going to be a lot of work up to the lungs, right? So a lot of strength there. So if you feel like, oh, I go this far and now I can't even take a good in breath, right? Then you want to get back up on your blocks and work your way towards that. Right, inversions are a bit of a doozy, right, for strengthening here into our lungs, especially these types when you go to a forward fold. So take a slow breath, filling up through the nose. Right, remember the lungs don't create the breath, right? It's the movement in the ribs. Belly relaxes. Okay, now if your hands are low, okay, to the floor, I mean, they're all low, or the ankles, I want you to come back to your blocks and then turn to your left foot. And you're just going to pivot and take a lunge. So I'm going to have my hands on blocks. I have to be careful of this right side of my back. Okay, I mean, we all should be. So when we turn, we want to feel like the crown of our head reaches away from the wall and our back foot turns, so it's now parallel. So everything kind of lines up on that right side. Keep it like this really easy lunge, right? If my back knee is not dropping, okay, number one, happy your knee. My front knee is about above the ankle. Maybe it's a little forward. Maybe it's pretty good. I feel that balance. So now I want you to just step forward into that, both feet into Uttanasana again, and moving the arms out to the sides, open out through, kind of open your cape here, reach out your arms, shoulders back, and we're going to try to come up. You won't see part of me here, but you're going to push into your feet and bring your arms up. Slow blood pressure drops, so just be careful when you come up. That's going to happen. Hands touch together, press. Feel the hips gently arching, so you're not going to be trying to keep the spine from arching. You feel the tail move a little bit back, and then let your arms open out. Okay, if you're losing your balance here, if you're feeling too tippy, you bring your hands to hold your hips firm and push into your feet, right? And then arching as I go forward fold, bend the knees. All right, and then step that left foot back. Okay, I purposely push it into the wall with the heel up, so it's a little easier transition into my hip. Okay. All right, we're going to add a pigeon pose in a few moments, and I'm going to add an alternate variation because I know there's a couple at least that don't practice that shape, at least 2 or 3 people. So I recognize that. So when you are in the lunge, some of you are pretty eager to go into pigeon probably. So give it a few moments where you're loading into the hip, right? So you can feel how you stimulate that muscular energy by pushing into a lunge, right? Again, this is a pretty high-ish lunge without a lot of balance, right? I'm not putting my arms to the ceiling. I'm just putting all my weight into my leg, okay? So those that are going to come into pigeon, right, you're going to move your bolster across the mat and make sure your bolster's far enough forward so when you walk your right foot over to the left, you might decide, okay, first things first, knee down, then walk my right foot to the left, okay, and then coming on up into pigeon. So you're in more of a higher pigeon versus sleeping pigeon to start, okay? Okay, I'll show variation. So for the rest of us that are like, okay, I'm lunging, I don't know what I'm going to do now, right? What you might do, if you're up here in the lunge, is step forward, okay? Get your bolster, place it. This is the challenging part, is getting on the bolster, isn't it? So now as you go down the bolster, you're going to take, and it's a good thing to practice often, getting up and down. You know, the whole conversation about that for how long you're going to be around. Okay, so block, but we don't know those stories. Block is under the right foot. So those of us that are anti-pigeon, okay, right foot is on a block. I would say put a ball under your left knee. If your left knee is like, I don't want to have anything to do with bending, just straighten it and put the ball under it and take that forward fold. Okay. So those of you in pigeon are kind of sort of similar, right? You're not that different. The knee is out. We're all special, right? It doesn't mean that it's a special pose, but it does kind of hook and sink into the hip a little different, perhaps. So if you're in pigeon, lower down, try to come down to your elbows. Try to get all the way down, okay? Elbows wide, forehead down. Okay, those of us on the block. Is anybody using the block for this one, by the way? Maybe I'm adding, okay, good. Yeah, and you're using maybe the ball under the knee, maybe the leg is out. So if you're on the block, get a belt, okay? All right, belt goes behind you. Hold on. Okay, this way when you lean forward, right, you might pick up a little circulation in the shoulders and mostly in the spine down to the hip, connecting to that right SI joint. I know the belt's not connecting to your SI joint. I don't mean you're going to floss the belt in there. I don't mean that. But feel when you lean forward, you can flex through the foot. Try that, the pigeon ears here. If you're in pigeon, see if you can flex the right foot. Good luck. Okay, breathe. Okay, and let's switch sides. So if you're on the block, I'm liking the block thing here. I can take my legs to reach out, maybe shake it out a little bit, a little shaky, and then switch sides. Okay, if you're in pigeon, okay, you're gonna go from that right leg forward. I'd say come up, lean into the flesh of the right thigh, the upper thigh to the rear, and then swing that left leg across, and then use that kind of coordination here in your middle to bring the right leg back. Okay. It's like break dancing, right? So you're trying to swing back and you're trying to coordinate your core with your hip, with your spine. And then there you are, right? So I like the wall a lot for this. I'm really enjoying that feedback into my muscles. So I'm pushing, and then that brings that kind of a distinguished mark of sensation in my strength in my lower back. So be proud of yourself. You can go into these, right? Even if I'm sitting, right, going into this with the block, I think the help with the belt is just to create that mark of strength in your lower back. That's all. And you don't have to use the belt. You could be here and lean forward. You don't have to. But I get a little lazy in my back when I do this. Like I start to kind of creep into rounding. So if I have my belt, then I don't have to overly process this. I can just reach back and just lean a little bit. Yeah, a little bit is probably better than too much on this one. Take a few moments. If you don't like that right leg bending, you can have the right leg out with the ball under the knee. No sand yet. We'll get to sand. Okay. Yeah, these shoulders. The rolling shoulders. Okay. Okay, now come back on up to simple sitting on a bolster. So those of us that are in pigeon will swing the back leg forward, kick out of it, and let's get closest to the wall. I've had some feedback about the wall twists are kind of challenging. I've had some feedback. So you don't have to use the wall for the twist. You could use it as a place you're going towards, but wrap your arm around your body instead of the wall, because it does give some feedback in the muscles. So I want you to scoot your bolster back so you could touch to a wall. If you don't have a wall, you could use a chair easily on this one. Or like, I guess if you have an ottoman nearby or a bed or a couch, that would work too. So take a seat centered. I mean, your bolster's not that big, so you're going to be in the middle of it. And I want you to have a block set just in case. Have a belt, okay? and left leg stretches out. Okay. I was playing with this, thinking about all these different waves of movement, but I like the general kind of exodus of movement in the middle, trying to always kind of spreading that out. It's just different than our daily habit, right? We're kind of always inwards and reaching. So that might be part of the challenge with the shoulders. So take a ball under the right knee. My right foot is near my left leg, but it's not touching it for me. Now, some of you might be in the habit and done this many times where you hold your ankle and you pull it in towards the bolster or the thigh. But I just don't think that's the right thing for my knee to feel all the time, like pull, because this is going to get dragged into it. So I'm just going to have it kind of a light, crossing. Yeah. So left leg is out to about 10 o'clock. Okay. So add a sandbag to the right thigh and keep going, keep turning. So right hand back to the wall. Now you can use a block under your left thigh if this is hurting your knee or if it feels like, oh my, it's starting to lock. So I could just put the block under the upper, just above the back of my left knee. And oh, I love that. So I hold on to my right knee or just above my knee or the sandbag. And then here's the work. It's with the armpit chest. So feel the turn to the right. Right, you can always bring your left hand up towards that zone, that weave of pec muscle, right to the armpit area. This is a good one to rub, or if you have like a tennis ball, you can just do some tapping with it, or just tap it with your fingers. Just get some energy moving. It might just be so stuck in there, up in these ribs where it's hard to get the shoulder to activate. So if it's tough with your hand back, just wrap it around your torso. It is a lot. You can bend the elbow. You can get closer to the wall. That might make you a little more comfortable, to be honest. Now with that turn through the lung here, so kind of twisting a little bit into the upper back. And now lean to the left. Now my intention with the belt was that you hold your foot with the belt, but this is working pretty good. So I'm just going to lean my left arm to the leg, let the right arm stretch over. But if you want to use your belt, you can connect to your left foot, bend the knee a little more so you can scoop up your foot easily, and then hold the foot with the belt, and then lean in. And another thing you could do is use your block instead of the belt, right? The sides to the left of the leg. You can bring it up to the highest setting and lean into that with the arm resting. This is probably my favorite version. Right, then I'm not gripping with my fingers. And you can let the right arm reach behind your back in the final few moments of this one. You feel the breath as a stretching tool, right? Feeling it down to this right lower side of the torso. Even though, yes, you're breathing in through the nose, it's kind of at the other end. You want to feel how that spreads through these intersections of breath, right? Of ribs, of belly. But there's the back rib space. Good. And then relaxing your reach with that left arm and come on up. Okay. And then when you get ready to switch sides, I'd say do a little cobbler pose in between. If your knees are not, if it's kind of not negotiable in your knees, you might bring your feet a little farther, just down, just move. You don't have to cram them up to the groins here. And you can put your sand on the feet and just take a moment to find some awareness. Right side feels a little different than the left for me, and the S side, a little more spacious, just definitely more spacious on this side. So I might put my knuckles right at the upper hip zone and just press and lift up the arch of the ribs, not those feet. And then come down to the next side. You don't have to lean forward and push. That's not necessarily the best thing for my back, right? So I want to just inspire that stability in my core. So I'm going to bring the sand over to the left side. Yeah, I think on this side, when my right leg moves out, I'm gonna put the ball under that knee instead of the block. Okay, so you could use a block or nothing. You could use a ball or block under the left knee or nothing. But once I'm here, okay, I can feel where that right side is trying to turn. So, you know, I know most of our movements are extremity based, right? Leg, foot, walk, arm, reach. So let the ribs, the waist, all these muscles in here do the movement. You might be surprised at how challenging it can be to breathe easily in a twist. So if you need to adjust, like sit yourself back on the bolster a bit, reach your hand to the left leg, bring the left hand back and turn, breathe. Okay. And you might be needing to move your hip a little back. So if this feels like I'm requiring too much rib flexibility, lung flexibility, elasticity here, remember you can put your hands on the bolster, just kind of move your left knee a little over to the left side, put your block there, your ball, and then turn. Right, this area in the middle, right, the pelvis is everything, right? It's going to help all things movement oriented. So yeah, be gracious, right, with this reach of the left arm back. Feel if you can move the shoulder a little bit back and down. You definitely can move the hand up the wall if it's a little charged in your shoulder. Say it gives a lot of charge. Move it up. Moving it back is not necessarily going to be easier unless you bend your elbow, right, and give a nice bend and circulation into your shoulder. Help out the heart here. Take another breath or two. And then when you're ready, you're going to lean down. So you're going to let your weight shift into your right sitting bone. Your right arm reaches to the right leg. Your left arm stretches over. Okay. So again, you can use your belt under your foot. Use your block under the right arm on that right side leaning as your left arm flows up or it stretches behind you. Yeah, and some of us might still kind of feel that reach towards the wall and just be really curious about, you know, this whole area is going to get some circulation just with pressure of the props in the next few moments. So it'll be taken care of if it's feeling a little vulnerable, a little charged. Take some deep breaths. And now as you breathe in, come up on an in-breath, okay? Now turn back center and we're gonna turn everything around upside down. So take the block and the ball aside and the sand. And I want you to just pivot. So you're gonna turn carefully on the bolster towards the wall, okay? Blocks go anywhere. I just have to move mine so you can see me. Scoot back, take a little time to scoot the bolster back. Don't get too far back because when you lower back, I'm gonna be center of the bolster. And this cue we went over in the training a lot was that you definitely don't want to be rounding your back in this pose. You want your tailbone at the edge so that when you come back, you're arching, right? Even if I go up with my legs and I can have a blanket or not, we practice without them for this, but I definitely am one that likes a blanket under my head. So you can go with or without. It wasn't for a lack of props. It was a little bit of the discipline of the subtle body, right? Moving the energy upon a body, like move it up towards the lung, the heart, the brain. So if I got this blanket, you know, it's not going to let me go as far back. So it's up to you. Okay, so get a belt. Don't worry if you're too close to the wall because we won't need to worry too much about the wall. We're not going to hit it. Okay, buckle up. So make sure you got that arch. Okay, so you know, if you feel like, okay, let's say you're this far back on the bolster. No good, really, really bad. And this is seen often in class, in person. I'll see people like this and then they start saying my back is hurting. But this seems like too much, like they're not so sure, like, well, that looks like that'll hurt more. But you want to focus on the rule of the rib, right? So you got at least one or two ribs that you can feel lifting with a bolster under. So scoot forward so you got that nice rib stretch. Okay, belt to feet, knees are out like happy baby, get a hold of the belt and push up. Okay, so wide stance. This is really, I like to call this leg float. Okay, so I have my legs kind of surrendering and all those twisting movements we did, right? So let the belly brain, right, the navel center soften. If you need to move your bolster, if it's not perfect, really sense for yourself. Like the bolsters, this is its only job. So tug it around, make it work for you because you want it to be active and you to receive the support. So let the belly move comfortably and soften with the breath. Arms could be in goalpost. You could be feeling your breath with your hands on the core. It's up to you. Right? This might be too much. Elbows out. You might go straight out with the arms to the T. Right, this is it, right? This is being in your body. So even if you've lived in it a while, see what you can do. Dynamic motion here with the breathing. If the feet get tingly, right? That's reality, right? They might get tingly, cool. You'll feel that circulation transition because the legs kind of liven up, right? You stimulate the leg area. As you refresh the legs and feet, it reverses that lymph drain back towards the collarbones. And in that area, right, it moves down through the blood, right, through the organs of elimination. So this is a great pose. This is a master pose, right? Anything legs upside down. You know, when you bend through the legs, you feel the pelvis lifting, right? So it's interesting. It does combine a little bit of flexing, right? I have to say, I do feel that. I'm not feeling the rounded pattern in my back. It is both. So when you bend the legs, just reach up to the belt, slide the feet together. If you decide I want to go back to that pose, you can go back. We have a couple more to do though. So bend the knees, slide the belt off your feet, let the knees just go side to side. Kind of feeling it's a little bit like a windshield wiper motion, except the legs are close. And I would say feeling when the hips are pressing into the bolster. Some people complain about back stuff on this one, like it's there's issues in the tissues there. So what I find helpful for me, if I'm a little compressed there, is I might move the knees side to side, but also add a little bit of a swoop my knees towards my arm. Kind of like a smiley face in that lower back. Yeah, and having the legs close together could be so helpful. We teach it often with the ball center of the knees or a block, but this feels pretty good. So if you want to add the ball, you might find, if I have a little spacer between knees, I sometimes get a little bit of an adjustment more often than if I have the knees together. But I don't know, this feels good without it. Okay, you choose. Take a few more moments, about maybe 15 more seconds. Arms are relaxed out. Let the legs do the movement in the pelvis. Okay, and then when you come back in center, feel when the knees point straight up. So that means your feet do feel like they're kind of dropping towards ground. Kind of notice that the movement in the pelvis, the arch. Okay, bring your knees to your chest, hands on the bolster. I would say carefully move it down. Don't suddenly drop your back on the ground. Go slow. Once it meets tailbone, then you really want to squeeze the knees in, feet maybe up, and then you can land nicely. It's all how you organize this. Take a few drawbridges before we take our final hip crossover. So arms could be down by the bolster. I like the classic bridge, right? Where you got no blanket here. blanket free, but some of us will want a blanket, and we just lift and lower, and we massage through the spine. Oof. Okay, get a ball. Okay, now if you like this lift and lower, you can stay with it a few more moments. You could put a ball at the sacrum, so when you lower down, it feels kind of this nice little expansion. It's a nice little pressure point right at that base, and lift up. So you kind of stay touching the ball, but hovering over it. That feels good. A little self-care in the back lane. Okay, and then bring the ball to the left rear and massage into the glute. Okay, now you go a little deeper. You might add the blanket again. This could be helpful. Something to support pressure in brain. Okay, so I'm going to push my way a little more to the side of the hip, not so much the center rear towards the crack area. It's going to be a little side of the hip to the glute medius, and then press and go across. Okay, so feel when that movement is across the glute to the border. Okay, that's where you, if you use a sandbag in the hip crossover, that's where you put the sand, usually is about there. Okay, so feel that circulation kind of spike in that area. It shouldn't feel like the nervous system isn't, is in a fight, right? Or bracing. It just rubs the tissue that's tight. And then you might bring the knee in and away when you feel a knot. There's all kinds of things you can do with this. Moving the leg. And then ball to the other side. There's all kinds of things. We could be here all day. You're like, I'm not going to. Okay. But it's a good use of your time, right? A little self-care, health-care. So I'm going to put the ball to the right side. And then when I'm rolling on it, if you're not sure what is she doing, right? I've got the ball here. So I'm on my back. The ball is, I'm pushing it around this area. Okay. You definitely can move your knee in and out and up with the leg. Or you can just keep your feet on the bolster. It doesn't need to be fancy. That way you can just kind of drop your focus back and breathe. And just feel. And you really have to feel. I think you have to feel the heel, but maybe I'm wrong. You're just noticing what you feel with your awareness into these sensory rich, nerve rich areas, right? Into the glute. These fibers right to the lateral rotator, almost like I could feel it closer to the side of the rear towards the hip. Okay. Now you can keep rolling as long as you like, but now we're going to get ourselves into this hip crossover business. So take the bolster, kick it to the right side of your mat, cross the left leg over. The ball's kind of over here, so you're probably going to move it. You can move the ball to that sacrum area. Lately I've been doing this kind of thing where I put it under my shoulder and then kind of shrug my shoulder up and down and massage it. That feels good. I like that. But you might find, oh no, that's strange. I'm going to keep it at my tail. That's okay. So sand on. Now if the ball it's just feeling weird, you can move it down and feel it as a little bit of a massage into the upper back. Maybe your head is centered, maybe it's right, left. Okay. It's going to go one of those directions, huh? And instead of your chin going up when we're getting to the end here, see if you can have it centered just a tiny bit tilted down. Tiny bit. Okay, last few moments. And if something feels really therapeutic, you need to stay with it, you stay longer. You feel that nice combination of circulation in the belly organs. Okay, and then switch sides. So move sand or ball, and then, of course, bolster. Okay, some of you might do this crossover with the bolster under your feet. So if you're doing that, you'd have the leg over, knees to the right, and now you just switch the leg that's on top. You don't have to move the bolster, I guess. So, but this to me is a little bit more knee friendly for me, okay, maybe not for everybody. But that bottom leg, right, you want that to be bending, not straight. So as the right leg crosses over, I try to take some care. This is a good example of doing something where they talk a little bit in the osteoporosis world about it's good to do the gentle twist, but we're not trying to force the end range, right? The furthest you should go. So find a way to get balance. Like you got sand that's weighting you. So it's not like I put sand on my thigh. Now I'm going to push my leg further, right? I have the sand on it. So I stop. I receive the weight. The ball here is at the sacrum for me. And as I let the arm open to the right, I let my head roll and breathe. So feeling where your head rolls. If you do like to use the ball at your back, I mean, some of you might have the smaller ones. There's little 5-inch ones that they sell 2 of these now. And those fit in your back a little bit better. But they're really nice for that circulation into the shoulders. I mean, all you gotta do is put the ball there and shrug your shoulder and breathe. You forget you got lungs, you got the lung tissue in the upper back, you got the ribs up high as well. They're, sometimes I just think of when I point to ribs, I'm going to point in the middle, but there's just so many. So much to take care of in the body. Just pick and choose the good stuff. Okay, now when the spine is in its nice extension, try to celebrate that all the way to the end here. So last few moments here, if you decide I need to stay longer, you do again. Stay longer in the twist. It's nice to get just the right amount, maybe 1 minute, maybe 2. Takes about a minute to get into it, doesn't it? Okay, so with all that movement in the torso, kind of feel, is it more leg movement for you? Is it more torso? So I have to admit, I probably do more leg action, but I could do more breathing, movement, and torso circulation, because it just doesn't get that during the day, right? It just sits and prolapse. This area is just dropping. As we get older, as the prolapse gets, gravity situation takes a toll right on circulation in this area. So your gentle twists are important. Probably this one's a little more caters to feeling soothing than the seated twist with the wall. But they're all good. That might be a little more important, right, for musculoskeletal stimulation. This is a little more soothing. Okay, now move the ball, the sand, and let's get to our finale, into the wall. Okay, so push the sand away, roll to your left, be easy on your back. You don't have to overstretch and squeeze the knees in unless you like to. Some of us like that. I try to keep it real basic for my back here. So I'm going to move my bolster right up against the wall and then take my blanket. If you're a little chilly right now in your space, you're going to have an extra blanket as well. Okay, got an eye pillow. All right, so let's get ourselves set up for our legs up. If going up to the wall feels too extreme for you today, you can put your legs up on a chair. Okay, they call that one instant Maui. Certain legs, they call it these things. Legs up the chair. It's a little easier to get into. But when you sit up against the wall, you're on one side of your bolster. If the bolster is just a little too high, just use a blanket in a quarter fold. You can do that to get your hips up too. But as you roll, it's a roll to get up. You gotta roll a little bit. Swinging them up might be just a bit much, right, for the back muscles. So kind of think about anything where you can just roll around the pelvis, the ribs, and then I think the blanket under the head is good. I'm sure there's some discussion about, is that enough of an inversion now? I've lifted up this spring. So If you are cozy with less blanket, just a little padding, maybe that's ideal. You'll feel it in the, even though it doesn't seem like it's a big difference, it does feel different in the brain, a little different if you tune in there. Unless you don't want to feel that. Get a sandbag, maybe it goes on your feet, maybe you decide not to use sand today on your feet. So option 2 would be with the sand, I could put it on my lower belly. Sometimes that feels good. Okay, so my arch, my legs are not all the way up to the wall. I don't have my rear there. It just didn't happen. So I'm gonna accept this. But I might push my bolster a little higher up on my back. So I have that nice arch in my back, but I don't want to have the rounded. This is not what you want on your back. I don't think any condition, and there may be one that could be a contraindication, but nobody's, I hope nobody's expecting in this group, right? This would not be a great one. Okay. There's so much stimulation, right, from my legs all the way up into the groins, right? So I'm getting this reverse flow in the groins, right, all the way to the belly. If I have the blanket, I'm gonna put it on here. If you got a weighted blanket, even better, huh? Shavasana blankets are nice, they're a little weighted. And then arms are open, eye pillow on, or just let your eyelids be your own little eye pillows. So you can kind of close that, you know, eyes could be considered kind of your first connection, right, brain wise, with light and all that energy. So relaxing your eyes is important. So feel the in breath through the nose and exhale. Notice how much you can spread the ribs. I mean, I feel like it's a challenge this whole time with this pose. So I have to be patient with myself, using the bolster to help get some energy of arching and stimulation in my rib cage. And it's kind of like, right, you've poured some batter in and you want everything to kind of spread out, right? And then starts to bubble a bit. So you do want to have this movement out with this area. Because you are kind of, in some way, cooking yourself, right? This practice is definitely on marinating, right? I'm steeping. It is so true in practice. So, so true. I mean, your body, other things like, you know, as you're embodied, right? Your mind consciousness, think about just the field of movement with the parts. And just let that be. Trust the process. And then as it centers to your heart, so relaxing the heart. This can feel a little vulnerable, I think, on this one for the heart, with all that flow back to it. So if it's an energetic one for you, right, you might have to take a few slower breaths, back off on the thoughts, right? Just be and receive. Take a slow in breath, receiving, and breathe out through the mouth. Just let it go. Feeling that connection to the face, the throat, the chest. You know, those of us with that sand, we're going to shift the legs away from the wall, just maybe a few, maybe 5 inches in the beginning here. Okay. So as you Bend the legs. It's okay if you want to just toss the sand off your feet this way and let it just kind of drop. It's also okay to bend through the legs, but feel that balance of weight into the bolster and then remove the sand and bring the feet to cobbler's pose, right? This is a good one, especially those of us when we sit in it and the knees don't like it. If we're upside down, right, it can be a little bit more comforting. It just depends. Knee stuff is all over the place with issues, so I may be incorrect for you, but press into the inner thigh. This is a great one. You can keep your spine in a really nice um, support, right, with the arch, with the length, and then push into the groin so you feel that circulation in the adductors. I mean, you can never push this one enough, right, with the energy in the legs, because this groin stuff, right, can feel really stuck. So it just drops back into the hips when you let it go. Let's draw the knees in, find what's comfortable. I really like this variation where I put the blanket, kind of roll it right at the belly, and then my knees drop back, and then it just kind of massages into that area. Breathe, and then roll to the side. Roll, roll, roll your ribs, and then come upstream and take a seat. Okay, finding where the spine, kind of find where your spine feels. You don't have to touch it. It's not a place you touch very often, your spine, is it? It's not the place you're pushing onto, but you feel the response of it from your body's, sensation. So feel the heart lift, bring the hands to the heart, palm to palm. And let's unite our focus for this practice today. Feeling the energy inside, the awareness for calm. Let's inhale, breathe, and with